All right. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone who's joining in for today's live event with HundrED and the Web Days webinar series. My name is Joe Grabowski. I'm really excited to be joining everybody today and to share a little bit about why I think it's so important for students to become global citizens. Why we need to open our classrooms up into the world. And I want to share a little bit of my story, the reasons for why I felt this was necessary to start in my classroom, how it led to forming an organization that I started called Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And then I wanted your help at the end, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So as you can see today, I'm sharing my screen, but I'm keeping it a little picture-in-picture so you can see me kind of up here in the corner. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to keep an eye on the live feed as well, because I would love to see any questions that you guys might have. Introduce yourselves, let me know where you're watching from. I think that's a really important piece as well, is that we can have a little bit of interaction. We can ask some questions and we can make sure everybody gets their voice heard today. So I'm really excited, really looking forward to today's event. So let's go for it. Let's dive right in. So I'm just gonna, there we go. All right, so I called my talk today Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and it's going to make a little more sense as we get a little further in, but really it's a play on the fact that we can now take classrooms anywhere in the world. Classrooms never have to leave their seats. With the technology that we now have, we can explore the world in ways we couldn't before. We can bring our classrooms along for the ride as well, so that's pretty fun. Okay. So a little bit about myself briefly to get started. I live in a little village called Elora in Ontario in Canada. And this is my family. So my wife Elizabeth, and then I have two kids. I've got Finn, who is in grade 1 now, and then Nora is 2 years old. And then we have two rescue mutts here. You can see down in the corner, there's Zeppelin and Maya. So I spent 2007 living in Australia. My wife was there attending teachers college. I'd studied biology and zoology, but wasn't sure what I wanted to do going forward. And I came across, through my travels, I realized that I wanted to share my passion for science, exploration, and particularly what we're doing to our planet with the next generation. So when we got back, I went to teachers college and went from there. So I taught for 6 years. I taught math and science in the classroom. So another thing I took back for me in Australia was I started diving. So I've been diving for about 12 years now. I train to dive in different places all over the world. It's pretty awesome and something I really enjoy doing. Few little pictures to show you here. Here's a green sea turtle in action on the Great Barrier Reef. You can see the beautiful colors. I love shark diving. Here's some hammerheads. And I've got a little clip that I want to share with you of some hammerhead diving. So this little clip should share here. So you can see there's nurse sharks all along the bottom. And then the hammerheads kind of come in one at a time, one at a time. It's really neat to be able to see them. There's one. So I spent 6 hours with these hammerheads over the course of 2 days on the bottom of the ocean. Sometimes they get really close, like this one here. All right, very cool to be able to see and experience these kind of things. So as we keep moving through, I'm also an explorer with National Geographic. In 2017, I was named an emerging explorer with National Geographic. And then I'm also a fellow. So the last 2 years, I've been an education fellow with the National Geographic Society as well. Last year, I was named a top 50 finalist for the Global Teacher Prize, which is a pretty amazing experience representing Canada. All sorts of really cool opportunities that have happened, all because I opened my classroom to the world and tried something different to try and excite my students and make them passionate, try to inspire the next generation of scientists and explorers. So a few little journeys I've been on recently. I spent 2 weeks on board the exploration vessel Nautilus, which was pretty awesome, exploring the Monterey Bay Marine National Sanctuary with remotely operated vehicles. I also spend some time diving in the kelp forest recently. So this is off the coast of California. You can see him with another diver flying the National Geographic flag. And then just last week, I was able to go to a place called Sudbury, Ontario, and I went to the world's deepest underground clean facility. So they study neutrinos from the sun. They look for supernovas. They're looking for dark energy. So I was able to go 2 kilometers underground and explore this amazing lab space, and then broadcast live to classrooms from 2 kilometers underground, which was pretty cool. All right, so what's the issue? Why have I started opening my classroom up to the world? So a few years ago, I looked at my students and I just didn't feel like I was reaching them the way that I wanted to. A lot of them went home, and they'd get home, and instead of going outside to play until the lights were being flicked and they were called back in by their parents, they would play video games. They'd watch movies. They weren't spending any time outside anymore. And so this is a book many of you may have heard of, Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. And this book talks about nature deficit disorder, how kids aren't getting outside, they're not exploring, they're not connected with nature. They don't have that connection with science and the outside world like they used to. Another thing that really affected me was, I was teaching students in grade 7 and 8, so 12 and 13-year-olds, and even in our home country of Canada, a lot of them couldn't identify, country name, not country names, but some of the province and territories, some of the capitals. A lot of them weren't able to pick those out on a map, so they didn't have that geographical sense like they should have, and I knew I had from growing up. Now, if we take a look around, I'm just going to move this icon here so you can see a little bit better. If we take a look around the world, we see something very similar with STEM careers, science careers, engineering careers. And we see that it's dominated by white men. Up to 50% of people are white men in these careers, science and engineering. Women, about 18%. You can see for minorities, it drops even further. So I think it's really important that students see themselves in scientists, in explorers, in engineers, in adventurers, and they see that they can do that too. So another thing that I was noticing about my community was, a lot of men were in these STEM positions. And that's something that you hear about from others as well. Oops. All right. So growing up, Jacques Cousteau was one of my heroes. And he had this quote, "People protect what they love." So in the school district I was in, the demographics, it was a high needs community. So a lot of students didn't get opportunities to travel, didn't have opportunities to see new places. Some of them didn't have a lot of science role models in their families. So they weren't learning a lot about the world around them, why it was important to be protected. And, as Jacques Cousteau said, people protect what they love. So I knew there had to be a way to get more science, more exploration into classrooms to inspire that next generation of scientists and explorers. And I do have a lot of friends who are scientists and explorers, and they all share a really similar story. They all remember a time that they met someone, they saw a documentary, they watched a video, something, and it flicked a switch for them. It shed a light on a new issue. It showed them a new place or something that needs to be protected, and then that's what they went after, their new career path. They had a goal, a passion was ignited, and they became scientists, they became engineers, they became explorers. And so that's kind of what I wanted to try and figure out how to do for my students. Could I find a way to inspire them to be scientists, to be explorers, to be like that? And so it really comes down to good mentors. And I want to share a quick little story here. This gentleman's name, this is Joe Mcginnis. And Joe Mcginnis is a Canadian diver, medical doctor, been diving for years and working on a lot of underwater habitats for the Navy. How can we keep people down for longer and keep them safe and so they can do their job? And so after one particular mission where they tested out a new habitat for divers underwater, he got a letter from an 11 or 12-year-old boy who said, "I think what you do is so cool. You're my hero. I want to be explore the oceans when I grow up. will you send me the blueprints for the habitat that you guys built for the divers? So it would have been really easy for him to kind of ignore the letter or not answer back or not send anything, but he took a different route. He did send a response back. He sent a rough sketch of the plans for the habitat, and even told the little boy where he could find some materials that he could use for the project. And so that little boy built a little scale model of the habitat, lowered it into a river with a mouse inside. And, you know, the mouse survived the journey as an aquanaut in the river. And that boy grew up, and that boy was James Cameron. So I think a lot of us know James Cameron from movies like Avatar and Titanic. I know him mostly as a National Geographic explorer. He is one of the few people to go down to the deepest point in the ocean, and him and Joe Mcginnis have remained friends to this day. So it really goes to show that, you know, mentorships young and sparking that interest in students when they're young, showing them the world, can really have a big impact. Who knows where it could take your students? This is just one tiny little story, one tiny little example. So summer of 2014, I knew I needed to do something to shake things up in my classroom. I just didn't know what. I didn't know how to reach the students. I didn't want to use the textbook as much as I was. I didn't want to use as much pen to paper as I was using. So I knew I had to do something else. And so I came across an article about Fabien Cousteau. Jacques Cousteau's grandson would be living at the bottom of the ocean for 31 days, mission 31. And it said he was going to be Skyping with classrooms. I knew my classroom had to be one of those classrooms. So I reached out to his PR person to see if I could get that set up. And in the meantime, I started looking around for other connections my classroom could make. So this is one of our first connections. This is a orphanage in Uganda. They just got the technology to be able to do this, to connect with my class. These students were 5 to 17 years old. And for 30 minutes, it was like they were in the same room together. Even though they're 1,000 miles apart, they were singing, they were dancing, they were laughing. It was such a powerful experience to see the students in this way. I knew I had to find a way to make even more of these connections. I could see the power of these connections for global citizenship. So we set a crazy goal that year to do 50 connections with scientists, explorers, conservationists from all over the world. And we did it. We had 52 connections by the end of the year. And they were all just made by reaching out, introducing myself, sharing my classroom story, and inviting scientists and explorers to join in with us. So a few quick examples from the year. This is a Canadian astronaut, Jeremy Henson. So he's at a training facility in Houston, talking about his job, doing a Q&A with the students. This is a penguin colony in Antarctica. We had a scientist who lives there 4 months a year, and she beamed into our classroom. And the penguins were all looking in the cameras. The students were asking their questions. It was pretty cool. We were talking global warming, so we connected with Paul Davidson on a glacier in Iceland. So seeing the glacier, learning about what's happening to glaciers around the world. And we were talking geology. This is Hugh James. His team was on an expedition to Mount Etna in Italy. And so as he's talking to us about rocks and geology, we can see Mount Etna billowing out ash in the background. So that was pretty cool. So after doing these connections, making contacts all over the world while making these connections, the summer 2015, something didn't feel right. I didn't feel like enough students were being impacted. So 20, 30 students a year in my class was great, but I knew there was a way that we could bring these connections to more students. And so I started an organization called Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And it's all about bringing science, adventure, exploration, and conservation into classrooms across North America and now hopefully the world. And we do it through live events where classrooms can join in a variety of ways. So since 2015, we've run well over 1,000 live events with scientists and explorers from over 60 countries around the world, and hundreds of thousands of students have taken part in these live events. So pretty cool. What we do with these events is they all run through a version of Google Hangouts that's built into YouTube Live. So there is multiple ways that the classrooms can take part. They can be live on camera and interacting and talking to the explorer and asking questions that way. So we can have up to 7 or 8 classrooms who join in that way. And then they all stream live to YouTube. So any classroom anywhere can tune in live, send in questions via the chat bar, and take part in the event. And they all record to YouTube. So we have a variety of these events, hundreds of them available on our YouTube page that classrooms can use anytime. And it's all about inspiring the next generation of scientists and explorers, introducing them to important and challenging issues happening around the world, taking them to exciting places they may not have even known existed before, introducing them to really strong, positive role models, and of course, new career paths, new careers that they can jump into and take advantage of. So a few pictures of some classrooms in action. You can see this class is using some one-to-one tech in their connection. We do lots of guest speakers, but we also do lots of virtual field trips to sea turtle rescues, penguin rehabilitation centers, all kinds of cool field trips to aquariums and zoos around the world as well that classrooms can take part in. It's very interactive. Students love taking part and joining in. And then we take them to some pretty extreme places. So I'm going to share a little bit of information about how we do that next, but I also want to share a little video clip. So I challenge our scientists and explorers to send us back really neat videos from different places and talking about how they explore by the seat of your pants. And this one from Canadian adventurer George Karunis is going to be a hard one to top in the future.
I'm explorer and adventurer George Karunis, and when I explore, I do it by the seat of my pants.
All right, so this will also flash the website as well. So it's www.exploringbytheseat.com. So definitely check it out, sign up for the newsletter, and you can get started as soon as tomorrow with these events. So we run 30, 40, even 50 of these live events in a month for classrooms to take part in. Usually it's a nice grab bag from the worlds of science and exploration. But in this case coming up, we are the week of June the 3rd, focusing on the ocean. So 25 ocean explorers and scientists, June the 3rd to the 7th, that classrooms can take part in, join in live on camera, and take part in the events. Some other special events we do in February, we kick all the men out and we host exclusively women in science and exploration, which is always a fun month. And then what we do here is 100% free for classrooms and always will be. I want to create a level playing field where no classroom could be left out, no classroom could feel like they couldn't participate, and have some classrooms who could do it a lot. So we don't charge anything for these events. It's free for classrooms everywhere. We're a nonprofit, so we look for funding from donations, from grants, from sponsorships from organizations, but we keep it free for classrooms everywhere. And then a lot of the events take place from the explorer's home or the scientist's lab or office or in the field if they have a good cell phone connection. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to find a way to bring the most remote regions of the planet live into classrooms. And we do this through BGAN technology. These are satellite units the size of a textbook. We send them around the world with scientists and explorers, and then they can use them to video broadcast live into classrooms from pretty much anywhere on the planet, which is pretty amazing. So we've sent these units all over the world. A few little examples here. You can see an explorer in Antarctica. So they've got penguins in the background. They're at an old British station. You see the BGAN unit set up at the bottom, and they're broadcasting live from Antarctica into classrooms. The students are asking questions, interacting, not only in an amazing place, they're learning about global warming, they're learning about what they can do about it, they're learning about careers, and meeting a pretty cool role model in exploration. This is another penguin hangout, but this time it's from Patagonia. So this is in South America. Each year the penguins come on the beach to breed, and so we broadcast live from the penguin colony. The students learn about the human impacts, really cool career in biology that they can pursue. Another really amazing experience. So we're doing this with the satellite technology, no cell phone connectivity, no internet, doesn't matter, we don't need that. So here's a beach in California with some scientists who were studying and tagging elephant seals. So they're putting tags on to track the elephant seals' movements around the world, can tell them a lot about how they're doing, about endangered species, about things like climate change. This is Clipperton Atoll, the most isolated coral island on the planet. And you can see we have two scientists there broadcasting for us in the middle of the ocean. And then this is Guatemala. So this is a volcano in Guatemala. They're looking down into the caldera of this volcano. So pretty amazing experiences that technology lets us bring live into classrooms. So I want to share a story. I want to share a story about why these kind of connections can have such a big impact. I'm pretty lucky. I get messages from teachers all the time about the impact that these have in their classroom. Some teachers keep logs, and the students write journals about what they learned, what they want to learn more about, then they go ahead and research. It spawns projects in different classrooms. It encourages students to go out and raise money to donate to these really important causes. All kinds of really cool material comes my way. And I have all kinds of stories to share about how this has impacted students, how it's made them become more aware of what's going on globally. It encourages global citizenship. And I want to share a story where I watched my grade 6 classroom become global citizens. And so as a diver, I love diving with sharks. And my class that year, wanted nothing to do with that. And Mr. G, I can't believe you dive with sharks. They're dangerous. Why do you do it? We don't understand. And so, no, I'm sure many of you know sometimes students don't always take their teacher's word. So I decided to bring in some experts. So there's an organization called Sharks for Kids, and it's founded by Jillian Morris. She's at the bottom right picture on the left with the blonde hair. And so she hung out with my classroom with a live experience for 45 minutes and shared her adventures diving around the world with sharks, the research she does tagging them at the Shark Lab. She talked about the filming that her and her husband do around the world for the BBC and National Geographic. And then she really shared with them the truth about sharks. So she taught them things like the fact we're removing 75 to 100 million from the ocean each year. Many populations of sharks have fallen by 90%, which is pretty amazing. How important sharks are as keystone species that keep reefs healthy and ecosystems in balance. We're removing sharks by accident for bycatch. Parts of their livers are used in products and cosmetics that we use. Their fins are removed for shark fin soup. So a lot of reasons why sharks have more to fear from us than we actually do of them. So after this event, my students, the switch had been flipped. They wanted to do something to have an impact, to help protect sharks. They weren't scared anymore. They were armed with the facts. They knew there was a global problem, and they wanted to try to use their voice to help solve that problem. So what did we do? We found out there was going to be a shark call in Western Australia. So there'd been some deaths recently in beaches in the Western Australia area, and the solution for the government was to kill sharks over a meter long, seen near beaches, particularly great whites, bull sharks, and tiger sharks. And my students knew that wasn't the right approach. They knew that many were endangered and protected species and that there had to be better solutions. So we wrote a series of open letters to the Premier of Western Australia, and we sent them away. So this was by far, in the 6 years that I taught in the classroom, the best writing students have ever turned in. They were passionate, they were excited, they were armed with the facts, and they wanted to do something. They wanted to send their voice out globally and have that impact. So the Premier wrote back to us pretty quickly. This is all done through email. It wasn't the slow snail mail kind of way. And basically said, nice letters, but you guys don't really know what you're talking about. And that made my students angry because they did know what they were talking about. And so they wrote another series of letters, did even more research, and then fired those letters off. And in the meantime, we made headlines both locally as well as globally. Here's a couple of those headlines. This is from our local paper. Here's a couple headlines from newspapers in Western Australia. We did a video for a conservation group in Australia. We took part in public service announcements. We even did radio interviews. So this was an absolutely incredible experience and process that my students took part in. Through the weeks that we did this, I watched them become global citizens. I watched them find their voice. I watched them, do what they could and learn that they could have an impact, even if it's on the other side of the planet, even at the age of 11 and 12, as many of these students were. So it was an absolutely amazing experience. And I get stories like this all the time from classrooms who had connections with scientists, had connections with explorers, learned about a new place, a new issue happening somewhere in the world. And then their students wanted to do something. They wanted to make a difference and have an impact. So it's just an example, a story that I wanted to share. And my students also wanted our school board to take part in their learning. So we did a guest speaker tour. We invited those same scientists, marine biologists from the Bahamas to come down and speak to all the schools in our school board. So 8,000 students had lessons from these marine biologists. We found the money through grants and raising money in the community, and were able to bring these into the community. We also, it turned into a yearly thing where each year we'd bring new speakers into the school board to talk to the school. So from, that one little lesson with a marine biologist turned into a campaign seen globally to help protect sharks and endangered species, and into learning that was experienced by all 8,000 students within our school board. So not too bad for one little 40-minute virtual connection with a scientist or an explorer. So that brings me to the help portion. Is I need your help. I need your help to help get these scientists and explorers into even more classrooms. So as I mentioned before, we have thousands of classrooms that take part in these events all over the world, or sorry, all across North America. When the time zones fit, we do have classrooms sneaking in from the UK, from South America, parts of the Middle East, whenever the time zones are friendly. But the goal now is to start doing more events geared towards more time zones, to start reaching schools in the UK, in the European Union, in Africa, throughout Asia, the Middle East. We want these events to be happening 24 hours a day for students everywhere, so that they can take part in these live experiences. So at the end of the presentation, which is coming quickly, I'm going to share my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Any questions you have about taking part. The technology that's needed, it's pretty simple. A laptop you can plug into a projector or a smartboard is really all you need to be able to take part. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear the questions that you have, because I'd like to start continuing obviously in North America, but start reaching classrooms in other places. So the more that I hear from classrooms in other locations, it means the more events that I can run. Now, we do have a large community of teachers as part of our Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants community, thousands of teachers across North America and other locations. So I'd like to hear more about your innovations. What are you doing in your classrooms? Is there something you'd really like to share? We usually put out 2 to 3 newsletters a month, and we always share exciting explorations, it's new science findings, but we also share really cool education opportunities and projects for teachers and students. So don't hesitate to reach out that way. If you have something, a member from the HundrED community, and you want to share something that you're doing in your classroom or a program you've developed, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to help you share those things. So I guess the last thing I want to share today is just the contact information. So www.exploringbytheseat.com is the site. I also do events for National Geographic. That's called Explorer Classroom. And with some National Geographic explorers, we host maybe 5 to 10 each month, and you can find those at the website listed there, or just search Explorer Classroom. Reach out to me on Twitter at Grabowski Scuba, or at EBTSOYP, just the initials for Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Don't hesitate to direct message me there. You can also, on the website, there's a contact section where you can send me a message, but the email is pretty easy. It's just those initials again, ebtsoyp@gmail.com. And then subscribe to our YouTube page. We have probably between 400 to 500 events up right now that we've kept up for classrooms to be able to use whenever they want to check out with their classrooms. So just Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants on YouTube. All right. Well, first of all, huge thank you to everybody who does take in this video. Huge thank you to HundrED for this opportunity to share what I did in the classroom and how it grew into this program, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and the impact it is having on classrooms all across North America, and slowly starting to happen with classrooms around the world. So it is so important for students to be connected with what's going on around the world, to feel like they can have a voice, to learn about things outside of their community. Not that the community is not important, but there's so much going on around the world, and it's important for them to know that their decisions, small decisions that they make at home or in their classroom, do have global implications, can be found, can have an impact around the world. So students are powerful. Students' voices do matter. And again, These connections are all about inspiring the next generation of scientists and explorers and conservationists, because we really do need to protect the planet that we do have. We do only have one. So through these connections, students meet exciting role models, learn about new career paths, learn about important and challenging issues like climate change, endangered species, habitat loss, happening all over the world, and they get to go to places where it was never possible before. You know, one last example, one of our last events just took place in Panama. We had the scientist about 100 feet up in the canopy of the rainforest, dangling from a harness in the tree. He wedged the satellite unit into the tree and then broadcast live into classrooms hanging in this tree in the rainforest, talking about all the opportunities there are in his field, how many species are still left to be discovered, about what's happening to the rainforest and why they need to be protected. And you know, at the end of the day, students aren't going to remember every single math lesson, every single science lesson, but these kind of connections, these kind of events where they're talking to a scientist in the field, or someone who just rowed across an ocean, or a penguin scientist in Antarctica talking about global warming, those events are the ones that they're going to remember. Those are the ones that are going to have real impact going forward. So again, thank you so much for hanging out today. It was really a pleasure to do this Facebook Live event. Again, contact information is here. Don't hesitate to reach out. I look forward to hearing from more teachers, questions, thoughts, comments. How can we get your classrooms involved? What would you like me to share? Yeah, looking forward to hearing from people. So again, thanks for this opportunity. Lots of fun, and looking forward to talking to more people in the community. So thanks everyone for joining in today.